Today we're diving into the stylish and genre-bending world of The Gorge, a film that blends action, romance, and a whole lot of surprises. We've got the trivia, behind-the-scenes facts, and everything you didn't know you needed to love this movie even more.
And it's quite a film to dive into, this 2025 release, The Gorge. The director is Scott Derrickson.
Right, who we know from some pretty intense horror, like Sinister, The Black Phone.
Exactly. But then he also did Doctor Strange, the superhero blockbuster.
Yeah.
So quite a range.
Yeah, that definitely comes through here. It's like action, romance, sci-fi, thriller, bits of horror, too.
Oh, yeah, even some cosmic horror vibes creep in.
Yeah.
It landed on Apple TV Plus S, produced by Skydance Media. And the cast, well, it's stellar.
For sure. You've got Miles Teller as Levi. He brings that whiplash energy.
And Anya Taylor-Joy as Drasa. She's just been in everything, hasn't she? Queen's Gambit, The Witch, Split, Furiosa. So versatile.
Totally. And then Sigourney Weaver shows up later on. Always great to see her. So the basic setup is really cool, isn't it? These two snipers, Levi and Drasa, posted at opposite ends of this just huge, mysterious gorge.
Yeah, and at first you think they're on opposing sides, like for different countries or something.
Right, but it turns out they actually work for the same private military contractor, this group called Dark Lake.
The big rule,
Yeah.
the one thing they absolutely cannot do
Is communicate, no talking.
Exactly. Which, you know, makes things interesting when maybe you start to connect with the person across the way.
It really does. We'll definitely get into that human side of things. But first, let's talk about the gorge itself. Because visually, it's stunning. Creating that was a huge job.
Oh, massive. The gorge itself is like, it feels like another character almost. Egg handled the visual effects with Eric Nordby supervising.
And it's kind of crazy how much of what you see isn't, well, real. They shot the actors on some practical pathways, built bits of the towers at Warner Bros. Studios Leavesden.
Right. But pretty much everything else, the vastness, the cliffs, the details on the rock, that's all CG. Yeah, they built this huge digital asset. Sources say they use LiDAR scans from Norway, texture photos too.
Down Norway. Oh, well.
And even scanned rocks in Scotland to get really fine textures. The idea was to create this plausible, hypothetical spot in Central Europe. So they pulled visual ideas from Norway, Greece, Turkey, Bulgaria. That's why you see that mix of trees, coniferous and deciduous, in the digital forests around it.
They even brought in a geologist early on. That seems like a lot for this kind of movie.
It does, but it shows they wanted that foundational realism, you know, even if things go off the rails later. And those forests weren't just backgrounds. Sometimes they're entirely CG, down to specific leaves, especially for scenes like Drasa running through them.
The fog, too. That fog around the top of the gorge adds so much atmosphere.
Oh, completely. Described as almost like another character.
Yeah.
Egg did a ton of tests on density, movement, looked at real foggy canyons. They wanted it to add mood, but not be, like, distracting.
I bet getting that right in every shot was a nightmare, technically speaking.
Oh, for sure. Close-ups, interactions.
Yeah.
When Levi ziplines across, they needed extra simulations just for how the fog would realistically fall off or it hits the rock surface. And then those shots from the quadcopters, looking straight across the top of the fog. Totally different rendering challenge.
The quadcopters. Chasing them through the forest. Also digital.
Yep, fully CG.
Yeah.
Egg built those. But they actually used practical models, too, like 1-to-1 scale versions.
What for?
They literally threw them down the forest set to see how the light would hit them, how much dust they'd kick up. That gave them real references to mix with clean background shots and the full FX simulations for when the drones are tumbling and crashing. It's pretty involved stuff.
Okay, that's fascinating. Let's shift gears a bit, back to the people. Levi and Drasa. That relationship is really the heart of the first part, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And it's built on that restriction, no talking. So how do you connect? Turns out binoculars and a giant notepad and marker pen.
It's surprisingly charming, actually. You really root for them. And Anya Taylor-Joy, wow, she has quite the backstory herself.
She really does. Sources mention she was born in Miami, so she's an American citizen, but grew up mostly in Buenos Aires and London, speaks fluent Spanish and English. And
she left school pretty early to pursue acting.
Yeah, at 16. Before that, she was serious about ballet, trained until she was 15. You can kind of see that discipline maybe in her performances.
Definitely. And that story about how she got discovered is amazing.
Oh yeah, it's like something out of a movie itself. Walking her dog outside Harrods in London, age 17, and gets spotted by Sarah Dukas.
The founder of Storm Management, the agency that discovered Kate Moss.
The very same. And that led eventually to acting. Apparently, she got introduced to her agent during a modeling shoot by Alan Leach from Downton Abbey, of all people. She was reciting poetry at the
That
time.
way, that's incredible. And then her big break was The Witch back in 2015.
Right. And since then, just boom, Split, Glass, Emma, The Queen's Gambit, obviously, The Northman, The Menu.
Queen's Gambit got her the Golden Globe and SAG Award, right?
Yep. Plus other stuff like an Empire Award for Best Newcomer, the Trophy Chopard at Cannes.
Yeah,
She's racked up quite the collection already.
seriously impressive. And Miles Teller. Whiplash is still the film people think of, isn't it?
It really is. And that connection becomes, well, kind of relevant later when we talk trivia.
Right, right. They definitely went through the ringer physically on this film, though. That scene with the Jeep hanging over the edge.
Oof, yeah. Miles Teller actually said he got a little banged up doing that one.
Yeah,
He was apparently very happy when that was done.
I bet.
And Anya Taylor-Joy sort of described the whole filming experience as rolling with the punches. Makes sense with all the action.
Okay, now let's get into some of the fun stuff, the quirks that got people talking. There's that scene. They find the secret lab, creatures are hunting them, and they decide to just chill and watch a movie.
Yes, that moment. A lot of viewers were just like, wait, what? It seemed completely absurd in that life or death context.
Yeah. But the details are what make it memorable. Right. They play chess.
Instant connection to Anya Taylor-Joy in The Queen's Gambit.
And then they play drums.
Blatant nod to Miles Teller in Whiplash.
So everyone assumed, okay, deliberate Easter eggs, fun little wink from the director.
That's what most people thought.
Yeah.
But then, one source mentioned this fascinating rumor that the scene was actually written before they were cast.
Get out.
Apparently. And Derrickson supposedly liked this so much he refused to change it after they were cast.
So it could just be this absolutely massive coincidence that's almost funnier.
It really is. It turned
Yeah.
it from a cute nod into
Yeah.
this weird, almost cosmic joke.
Yeah.
Intentional or not, people definitely noticed. And they noticed other things, too. Sigourney Weaver playing the head of this shady corporation.
Yeah. Immediately makes you think of aliens, maybe even Cabin in the Woods, that
Yeah.
archetype.
Exactly. And people saw Miles Teller, even briefly in a flight suit, and were like, he looks like he just walked off the set of Maverick.
Given Top Gun.
Maverick.
Yeah.
And someone thought Drassa had Lisbeth Salander vibes.
Oh, interesting. There were also some really specific, kind of random details people spotted in the towers.
Right. Like in the East Tower, there's supposedly a vinyl copy of the
Yeah.
Yes 2022 album, Cool It Down.
Okay.
And in the West Tower, someone's playing Fetty Wap on a JBL speaker. One viewer found that particularly unrealistic.
Fetty Wap in a remote sniper tower. Yeah, okay. That's a choice. And someone saw a Captain America shield on the Jeep.
A possible one, yeah. Eagle-eyed viewers definitely had fun spotting things, intended or not.
So let's dig into the actual secrets of the Gorge. What's the big reveal? What's really going on down there?
Well, a lot of it comes from that conveniently discovered secret lab or bunker inside the gorge itself.
The one with the perfectly preserved, working 2000s era computer and video that just explains everything.
That's the one. So according to this exposition dump, the site was originally used way back in the 1940s. Scientists, workers, maybe even families lived down there. They found signs of a church, a movie theater.
Like a whole lost world underneath.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Until an earthquake hit. Caused an accident involving some kind of bioengineered missiles.
Okay.
Released a gas, apparently mixed DNA, mutated the people down there into,
Yeah.
well, into the creatures.
The Hollow Men.
Exactly. Which, yeah, people connected to the T.S. Eliot poem.
Mm.
Suggests that emptiness, that limbo state.
Uh-huh.
Then the computer reveals this corporation, Dark Lake, sometimes called Darknet in the sources, took over in the early 2000s.
And they weren't trying to contain it, were they?
Nope. They specialized in genetics. They saw those unique mutated DNA samples as basically a gold mine, something to profit from.
Which leads to the really dark part,
Mm.
the protocol for the guards.
Yeah. The Dark Lake plan was to secretly kill the tower guards every year. Just dispose of them.
That seems wasteful.
The twisted logic was apparently about minimizing loose ends. Killing just 2 people a year, one from each tower, was easier to cover up as, missing mercenaries than trying to manage a larger rotating staff or deal with people who knew too much.
Grim. Extremely grim. And there was one more secret they found, right? A final failsafe.
The stray dog protocol. Basically, if containment totally failed, if the creatures were about to get out, Plan B was a nuke.
A nuke.
Yep. A nuclear weapon hidden somewhere, set to detonate with a 4.2-kilometer blast radius. But it had to be triggered remotely from a distance, which becomes important.
Okay, let's talk about the creatures themselves, the Hollow Men, and some of the, let's say, challenges people had with the action logic.
Right. The creature design itself got props for being disturbing, unsettling. Good mix of practical effects and CGI, people said. But their behavior, that raised eyebrows.
Like, are they supposed to be smart or just monsters?
Exactly. Some scenes imply they're tactical, maybe retaining memories from when they were human soldiers, but then other times they just blindly climb into obvious traps like those hanging bombs.
Yeah, I noticed that. And why do some stay on the gorge floor while others can climb all the way up? The spiders, too, they're agile, but they don't seem to just crawl up any wall.
It felt inconsistent to some viewers. One person offered a theory, maybe the smarter ones, the ex-soldiers, stayed low and hunted carefully, while the more basic mutants were the ones just mindlessly climbing into danger.
That's one way to explain it, I guess. But the bigger question a lot of people had was, why only 2 guards? For this incredibly dangerous site full of monsters and secrets, especially when they have automated defenses like those miniguns.
Yeah, that felt like a potential plot hole to many. Was it just to force the romance between Levi and Drassa? Or was it part of Dark Lake's twisted efficiency? Fewer guards means fewer people to secretly murder each year.
It's a bit thin, maybe. And the miniguns themselves were confusing. Where were they aimed? Why didn't they shoot Levi and Drassa when they climbed back up? Aren't they supposed to stop things leaving the gorge?
Big questions there. Maybe they only covered the side walls, not the central area near the towers. Or maybe the corporation actually wanted some things to potentially escape for research purposes, so the guns weren't foolproof. The film doesn't really spell it out.
Leaves it a bit ambiguous. Or maybe just convenient for the plot.
Could be either, depending on how generous you're feeling.
So, with all this going on, the creatures, Dark Lake, the nuke, how do Levi and Drassa actually plan to get out?
Their plan is basically trigger Stray Dog, the nuke, but do it from far away. Then escape the blast radius, make their way to France, and lie low. They even factor in a required 5-day quarantine period once they're out, just to be safe, check for contamination.
Makes sense. But things don't go smoothly, especially for Levi.
No, he gets injured pretty badly during his escape from the gorge itself. And that injury means he doesn't make it to the rendezvous point after the quarantine period ends.
So Drassa thinks he's dead.
Right. She waits, he doesn't show, she assumes the worst.
Which sets up the reveal of Levi's poem, She Collapsed the Night. The one he saved to be read if he died.
Yeah, it's a big emotional moment near the end. The sources quote some really striking lines. Let me see. I did not know. I knew how to hope. I did not know. I'd long been hoping. To behold you, coping only to be held by you, you unshatterable alabaster, you starlight carved by chainsaw.
Wow! Starlight carved by chainsaw, that's intense.
It really is. The interpretation is that it's this powerful love poem about how meeting Drassa essentially saved him, pulled him out of this darkness or night he was living in, gave him hope, a reason to live.
It's a strong ending beat, but the ending itself, it felt a little abrupt to some people, like practically speaking.
Yeah, that was another common question. How exactly did they make it back to France? They're injured, exhausted, probably no supplies, maybe not even sure where they are after the explosion and escaping the gorge. Feels like we skip over a pretty challenging survival trek.
Just kinda. Cut to them safe in France.
Pretty much. Bit of a leap for some viewers.
So putting it all together, looking at the reactions, the gorge seems like it really split audiences, didn't it?
Definitely a mixed bag. You had some people calling it an uneven blend, saying it succumbed to convention or loses much of what made it intriguing. Some found it pretty bad, even a terrible waste of time. One critique was that the action ended up being the least interesting component.
Ouch. That's rough. But others really enjoyed it.
Oh yeah. Plenty of people loved it, found it enjoyable immensely, called it a good or mind-blowing movie, described it as a fun sci-fi action flick and worth the watch, even while admitting it had flaws, like good, dumb fun, maybe.
So the ratings probably reflect that division.
They do. We saw specific scores mentioned like 610 from Screen Rant and a higher 7.810 from someone who really liked it and a 510 from another user. So if you average it out, it seems to land somewhere around a 6 out of 10 for a lot of people.
Okay. So appreciated for the unique concept, the lead chemistry.
Definitely. Teller and Taylor-Joy's connection, especially the nonverbal part, seemed to work for most.
But criticized for, well, a lot of things we've talked about.
Yeah, the plot logic issues mostly. That absurd movie watching scene, the inconsistent creature behavior, the questions around the zip line's existence, the miniguns not making sense, the convenient exposition dump, the whole killing guards yearly thing feeling maybe illogical or just grim, the romance being good but the story around it feeling dopey, pacing issues for some, and that slightly tacked on feeling ending.
It sounds like a film with great ingredients that maybe didn't quite bake evenly for everyone.
That's a good way to put it. Though remember that one interesting take, the user who suggested the fragmented structure was intentional, mirroring T.S. Eliot's The Hollow Men poem thematically.
That's a very academic defense. Gives you something to think about. Any other positives mentioned?
Someone specifically shouted out the Trent Reznor instrumentals in the soundtrack as a highlight, contrasted them favorably with some of the other song choices, the needle drops, which they found tedious.
Interesting. And just for the record, it's about 2 hours long, right? And
Yeah.
PG-13.
127 minutes, yep, and PG-13. So it's aiming for that broad audience, despite the horror elements.
Yeah,
Clearly a movie that sparked a lot of debate.
it certainly sounds like it. That's a wrap on our deep dive into the Gorge. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a fellow movie lover.
Mm-hmm.
And as always, stay curious. The best movie trivia is just a scene away.